Hello, my name is Merlin and welcome to Get Started. So you've built your first model. We've even painted Tyranids in the colour scheme of Highfleet Leviathan. Now it's time to turn our attention to the Space Marines, in which we're going to be colouring them as the Noble Blood Angels chapter. If you've watched my special, you'll know that I've left the Space Marine Captain in two sub-assemblies. We've got the Captain himself, who's been glued to a separate base for ease of painting, and we've also got the base detail itself. I've also primed these in, again, two colours. So for the Captain, I've used Sanguine Red from Colourforge, beautiful red colour, perfect for matching up with Mephisto Red later on. And for the base, I've used White Bone, much like we've done for the Tyranids, also from Colourforge. So the colours you're going to need are on the screen now. These are just the colours for the Captain, as I've already painted the Tyranid detail on the base. So if you want to learn how to do that, head back to the Tyranids video and watch the step-by-step there. Once you're ready, you've grabbed your brushes and shaken your paints, we'll head to the paint table and get ready to paint our Blood Angel. Right. As I've mentioned, I've already painted the Tyranid detail on the base, and I've got my models here in their two sub-assemblies. So you've got Captain Carlane here glued to a 25mm round base, ready for attaching to the paint handle. We'll put them to one side for the moment, and first off we'll focus on the base. So all we've got left to do is to pick out the rocks, the dirt here, and the bolt gun casings, as well as these little metal reed bars going through the ruins. So this is going to be a short and simple step. So first off, we're going to need Mechanica standard grade to paint all those rocks. So I've got a size 2 here, something nice and narrow for plenty of control. So gear some paint up on the palette, thin it with a touch of water, make it flow a lot easier. And we can start picking out all these rock details. Just be neat around the Tyranid growths on the base here, as these are already complete. But work your way around the base, getting every detail you can. And then leave it to dry before we move on to the next step. There we go, 2 coats of Mechanica Standard Grey are down. Now we can move on to our next detail. So the last matte colour we're going to be using is Carrick Stone, just to pick out the dirt. So just like before, we'll get a little bit on our palette, thin it down, touch water. And we're going to paint the area of dirt at the front of the model here, working it in between the rocks where we can. And we'll even paint over the flat of the base, which will come in handy for when we paint with our texture paint in a future video. Once the first layer is dry, you might need to go back and do a couple of extras just to get a pure coverage over the grey. So there we have the base detail pretty much done. All we've got left is a few little metallic details to pick out. So we've got a bunch of bolter casings on the stones, and we've also got these threaded bars sticking out from the rocks. So for the bolter casings, we'll use Retributor armor, and we'll just gently give them a coat of this. And then for the bits of threaded bar, we'll use lead belcher. And again, we've only got a few little bits, so we got one sticking out here, one here, and a third one just sticking out from the side. Yeah, we'll leave those to dry, and then we've got one last stage to do. Now that all our base details dry, we have one last colour to do, and that's to use our Agrax and Lamy Medium 1:1 mix and give it an all-over shade. So we use medium shade brush from Citadel, perfect for covering a small sized area like this. So just be careful around the Tyranid, but we can pretty much go wild with it. Working into all the nooks and crannies, so we get a beautiful dirty earth look. Yeah, now that the base is done, we can leave this to one side to dry, and we can focus on our captain. So here we have our Blood Angels captain, primed in Sanguine Red from Colourforge. And it looks pretty good already, but just to make sure we've given the model a full coverage, we'll bring in some Mephiston Red from Citadel and we'll focus this all over the armour. So we've got our size 10 flat here, so we've got plenty of coverage. Get a puddle of the paint ready on my palette here. And then we're looking to get a smooth covering of this all over the armour. We can avoid the cape and weapons, as these will be painted over in silver later. Just making sure we work this paint into all the recesses, all the areas up underneath, like his legs behind the cape here. Okay, up next we're going to focus on the metals. So we've got quite a bit here. We've got the chains we've added, we've got the bolt gun, the thunder hammer here, and the vents in the back of the armor there. So we're going to kick off with lead belcher. And we'll apply this to all the weapons and the chains, as well as the vents on the armor. So for this, I've got my size 3 round, and we'll load up with some lead belcher, and we'll start here on the storm bolter. So we'll pick out all the mechanical details. We've got the gun casing, the ammo case, and the scope on top there as well. And on the thunder hammer, we got pretty much the entirety of it. So paint all over the thunder hammer, working it into all the technical details. If we make any mistakes, don't worry, we'll tidy up later on. Now we've got that solid base coat of Mephiston Red. As you can see, it's a little pale here, so you might need a second layer of silver just to cover over the red. And then we got all these chains going across him. If we get the Aquila behind, don't worry, we're going to be painting that gold in just a bit. And a final detail to pick out, we got his bionic eye just inside there. With the silver details picked out, we can move on to our second metallic, which is Retributor Armor. And we're going to need a couple of brushes for this because we've got some small detail as well as some rather chunky details to get. So we'll start with the size 3, and we got the skull and halo on his belt buckle here that we can pick out, as well as the ends on the parchment. We've got this detail piece on the Stormbolter, as well as the wing design and this ank on the Thunderhammer. Also, we've got his iron halo that we can do with this brush, as well as the interior of his tilt shield. We can also pick out all the Terminator honours on the chains, both front and back, as well as any blood drop icons as well. As you can see, I've been quite messy here on the back. That's fine. We are going to cover this over with some black later on. We'll also pick out the angel chapter symbol on his right shoulder pad here, as well as the small skulls on his wrist and elbow there. Then we'll bring in a small layer brush just so we can reach in behind these chains and get the Aquila. With all our metallics now dried, we can move on to our next step, which is to start picking out some of the other colours. So first off, we're going to use Abaddon Black. This is going to be for the cape, as well as all the joints in the armour. So we'll start with the cape, and we can use our size 3 again. And we can start colouring the flat with the Abaddon Black. Being careful against the silver and gold we've already finished. And just getting a good solid cover. We might need 2 layers over the colours we've done so far, as some might show through. Just wait for the first to dry and then come back in with a second. Moving over to a small layer brush, we've got areas where we have the exposed undersuit. So on the leg here, just underneath the torso. And don't forget the joints in the arms. While we've got this, we can also paint the bolt gun casing black as well. With the black dry, we can move on to our next colour, which is Rakhar Flesh. So this is going to be for the inside of the cape, all the purity seals and parchments across the model, as well as his face and hair. So we're going to need a rather small brush for the majority of these parts. So either a small layer or a size 2 will be just fine. So we can use the size 3 for doing the inside of the cloak, as it's a nice large area. You might need to angle your model so you can reach up underneath. And again, you might need 2 layers. Then we'll switch to a smaller brush. So I've got my size 2. And we can use this to pick out all the parchment across our model. So we got one across a Crux Terminatus on his leg. We got all our purity seals, painting the parchment areas. And then we can carefully pick out his hair and face, being careful around the bionic eye, which we've already painted. And don't forget he's got his loincloth here as well. With that rack off dry, we can see our model is really starting to come along. So our next colour is Screamer Pink, and this colour is just for all the purity seals as well as any blood drops on the model. So as all these details are fairly small, we'll need a very tiny brush. So I've got my small layer here, and we'll start with the blood drop there on his tilt shield. So avoiding the gold banding, we just want to cover the raised area with the Screamer Pink, like so. Then purity seals, like the one on his leg here, we just want to cover the wax area. And we've even got the giant blood drop here on his shoulder pad, so we'll pick that out with the Screamer Pink as well. So just continue around the rest of the model. The only other detail we want to pick out is the grip of his thunder hammer here. So with all those purity seals and blood drops picked out, the last colour we need before our tidy up stage is Mechanicus Standard Grey, and this is just to do the Crux Terminatus on his leg and shoulder pad. So nice medium-sized brush, so I've got a size 2 here. That will be perfect just to cover these small areas. So just work onto the raised detail of each of these Crux Terminatus, and then we can begin our tidy up before our final stage, which is the wash. So all we've got to do now is have a quick tidy up before we move to the wash stage, and most of the tidying up there luckily is on the armour. So anywhere we spilt paint, such as got some Rakhar Flesh just on the hood here, we're going to reapply some Mephiston Red just to cover over those areas. Same here on the leg where the overspill of Rakhar Flesh happened. Just working it into all the areas that should be gaps and red panels, being as neat as possible against those completed areas. So with the tidy up complete, we're ready to do our final stage before we work on the smaller details. So as with all my Blood Angels, we'll use the same wash mix, so 1-to-1 mix of Lamy Medium and Agrax Earthshade. I always have a pot of this made up, and we're going to give this guy an all-over shade with it. So we're going to cover this guy head to foot in Agrax Earthshade with Lamy Medium. The reason we thin it is so it doesn't have such an overpowering appearance, and it just settles nicely into the recesses. It's also a brilliant colour for tying all of our previous colours together. So now that the wash is dried, we're ready to move on to our next steps. You may notice that since the last cut in footage, there is a few changes to the model. So after doing some research, I noticed that the background of the tilt plate was actually meant to be red. So I have painted that with red and shaded it with the Agrax. Also, his shoulder pad details should have been reversed. So this one we have a black field with the grey Crux Terminatus. And on this one, we should have had the black back with the red trim, not the black trim with the red back as I had previously done. So once you've made those edits, if you would like to, they're of course optional. You can paint your model however you want. We are ready to move on to the final details. So our first paint to use is Corax White. So this is going to be used to base all of the lenses on the model. So we've only got a couple. We've got the one on his gun as well as the one on his bionic eye. So we'll get a small amount of this paint on our palette ready. Get a nice rolled point to our brush. So on this one, it's easy. We just cover the end of the scope with the white. For his bionic eye, though, we're going to have to hold our breath and go in very carefully. And there we go. The overspill's not too bad, as it will help add to the glow effect later on. Now that's done, we'll leave that to dry for a little bit and we can move on to our next colours. With the green dry, we're ready to put our next colour down, and that is going to be the technical paint Tesseract Glow. So beautiful bright green, perfect for lenses as well as energy weapons such as plasma or even the Necron's Gauss weapons. So we've only got a couple of little areas to do, so I only want a small amount on our brush, and we will layer this over the white. Like so. That gives us a beautiful green glow to all our lenses. With that Tesseract Glow now nicely dried, we have just a couple of colours left to do. So first off, we're going to need Reikland Flesh Shade and Lamy Medium to make a 1-to-1 mix. And this is going to go all over the face and hair, just to give it a nice warm look to the flesh. Of course, the Blood Angels do have a rather pale complexion anyway, so that's why we're thinning the Reikland Flesh Shade with Lamy Medium. So with that mix prepared and a little on our brush, we're going to just gently glaze it over the hair and down over his face. With the Warhammer flesh shade dry, we have just one colour left to do, and we're going to put Imperial Fist contrast over his hair to give him that Blood Angel blonde. So we can use this straight from the pot, no need to thin it down, but we just want a small amount on our brush, as we only want to stain the area, not totally flood it. There we go, we'll leave that to dry, and then we can transfer him back to his regular base. So I've removed him from his previous base, and I've removed the blue tack from his scenic base, and we can push him down so he is ready to take on our Psychophage in our first battle. I recommend not gluing him down at the moment unless you are totally happy with the model, as in a future video we'll be coming back and adding some further details to this guy. But for the moment he is battle ready, and it's time for him to take on the Psychophage in our first battle. Congratulations, you've just completed your first Space Marine in the colours of the Noble Blood Angels. Just like with our Tyranids, we've used simple techniques to get a great and pleasing tabletop result. The Blood Angels are artisans at heart, both on and off the battlefield. As such, this is displayed across their various battlefield role squads. We'll cover this more in a future video when we add the Infernus Marines to our squad, as they have the heavy weapon squad markings. But for now, it's time to grab our battlefield board, our dice, and our data cards, as it's time for our first battle, as our Blood Angels captain takes on the Tyranids Psychophage. So that's it for this video. I'll see you next time on Get Started. But until then, thank you all very much for watching, stay safe and happy hobbying. Goodbye.